Hi everyone, it's Professor Fisher, and I'm guessing that most of you are working on your first lab assignment, creating a Java class. I will do my best to provide you with like a quick little hints or tutorial each week so that will maybe help you with the lab. So I wanted to start with this very first one. It seems like it's pretty straightforward, but there are a few things that I can show you just to make sure you understand the assignment and what you need to do. I guess the first thing I'll say too is that I am teaching the class, but a lot of the material was created by another instructor. You definitely can ask me questions, and I will always be happy to help. And I will definitely be available if you ever have code that you have an error and you can't figure it out. I would be happy to take a look at it. And usually I'll record a video to give you some explanation of what's going on and maybe why it's not working. All right, let's take a look at this one. And the objective is to create multiple instances of a class, in this case of a student class. Then the assignment is to use if statements, and what we're going to do is we're going to try and find the student with the highest GPA and the student with the lowest GPA. And we're only dealing with three instances of the class. So simple if statements will work. It gets a little confusing, especially if you have more than three objects, and I wouldn't recommend using a series of if statements. Then you might want to use a loop or some other way. All right, the attributes that you want for each student are first name, last name, age, and GPA. Whenever you see that, you should start to think to yourself, well, what is the data type of these values? So first name and last name are going to be strings. The age, you could say that someone is 19 and a half or, maybe 19 and a quarter, but for this assignment, I would be happy if we went ahead and define age as an integer. And then the GPA, but the GPA, we do want to allow a decimal point. So in Java, you have to use a data type that will allow decimals. All right, let me scroll down a little bit. And again, the deliverables here state that you should have two files, app.java and student.java, and they should be together in the same package. If you use the two examples listed above, the Lab01 starter or the Lesson01 constructors example, they both have a default package, which is fine for this assignment, but I already had a student say to me that NetBeans doesn't recommend the default package, and that is true. So I will show you when I look at the example how to create a new package name and to move the files in there. It's relatively simple, but you just want to make sure that these two files are in the same package. Once the program is done and you've tested it and you're ready to submit it, you're going to go to File and you're going to say Export to Zip. Now, depending on whether you're using a Mac or a PC, this zip file can be located in different places. So we'll also take a look at when you do the zip, it tells you where it's going to put the file, and it's important to take note of that. One other thing I want to mention, and I did put this in the, I believe in the syllabus or in the course here, that I would like you to add a comment at the top with your name. It'll make it a lot easier for me when I go to grade because I download all the submissions and walk through them. And rather than depend on the file name, if I had your name in a comment, it's going to make my life a lot easier. All right, there's also a diagram here that shows the contents. So in your app file, you're going to have, that's where you're going to create the three student objects. You're going to use the student objects and variables to find and display the lowest GPA and the highest GPA. You're going to have a student class, student.java, and this is going to have the first name, last name, age, and GPA, as well as a method called getInfo. If you look down a little further, it tells you that the students should be created with the four attributes. So you're going to want to assign the GPA for each student. And it doesn't really tell you too much about what the getInfo is, but what I would do is just have the getInfo return a string that contains all the student information, the first name, the last name, the age, and the GPA. All right, let's take a look at the example that was provided. I'm going to move this over here. Here we go. Hopefully you can see that okay. I downloaded both of them, the Lab01 starter and the Lesson01 constructors. I'm going to walk through the Lab01 starter. Okay, I'm going to use that one first. And so you can see here it has the default package, and inside the default package are the two files. If I wanted to create a new package, I can click on Source Packages, I can right-click and say New, and I can come down to Java Package. Your package should always be lowercase letters, so let's call it student app. And you can name this whatever you want, and then I'm going to say finish. Now I can simply drag my file down into my student app. And it's going to give me a message saying, do you want to move it from the starter to the student app? And I'm going to say yes, and I also want it to refactor. And what you'll see is that on line 1, when I did that, it refactored by adding student app package and line 1. So that's important. So now I have 2 errors because the student class is no longer visible because now my file is inside my student app package. So let's move the student one down as well. Let's put that one down here. And again, I want to say yes, go ahead and refactor. Okay, and now those errors are resolved. The other thing that I would suggest is that your class names start with a capital letter. Again, this was an example that was done by somebody else, so I'm not going to change it. If you want to, you can. In NetBeans, they have a nice feature. If I right-click and I go down to refactor, you can use the rename feature, and it will allow you to safely rename a class from lowercase s student to capital S student. But for now, I'm not going to do that, but I just wanted to mention that. All right, so here is our, let's open up our app.java. Okay, here's our app.java, and you can see that the template actually creates some variables for the student first name, last name, and age. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to add the GPA. So I'm going to say add GPA variable here. Okay, and then when you create the new student, so you have student 1 equals new student, you're going to have to add the GPA over on the right-hand side. And the same thing here. Now on line 17, when we create student 2, it's actually providing the values for each variable in the parentheses. So depending on whether you have a lot of variables, so the first example actually assigns the values to a variable name and then passes the variable name as the argument. The second one passes a string literal as the argument. All right, and then at the bottom, it's printing out this information. But really, we don't want to print it here. We want to actually change this so that the student class is returning the information. So let's take a look at the student class. And you can see here it has the first name, last name, and age. And I'll add another comment saying add GPA here. You're going to need to add in the constructor a GPA variable, and then you're going to need to assign the GPA variable to that value. So line 14 is your constructor that takes in all the values and assigns them to the first name, last name, age, and GPA variable. And then they have a get name here, but in the image that we looked at earlier, it said there's also should be a get info. So let's do that. So let's do public string get info. Now, because I'm doing this inside of the student class, I have access to all the variables that I need, and I don't need to pass any information in the parentheses here. So I'm going to go back over to app.java, and I'm just going to take these things out. Actually, let me just comment them out. So I'm going to comment these out. I'm going to go back over to my student.java, and in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to return the information. So I'm going to say return get name, because that will get the first and last name, plus, and now I want to also add, I'm going to add the age for now, because I don't have the GPA defined, so plus age. Okay, so now in my app.java, I can now say system.out.println. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this, there's a real nice shortcut in NetBeans. If you type in SOUT tab, it automatically expands it to system.out.println. And I can just go ahead and say st1.getInfo. And that will allow me to print out the information. And I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do, whoops, get out of the double quotes, st2.getInfo. All right, let me run this, make sure that I didn't break anything. And we have Emily Ogle is age 20 and Saquon Barkley is age 19. All right, so it looks like that's fine. And then the last thing you want to do here is you're going to go ahead and add your logic to find the lowest and highest GPA. Now, I do not want to see you hard coding this, so don't print it out and say, "Oh, Emily has the largest GPA, and Saquon has the lowest." You'll actually have 3 students, but do not hard code it. You have to have your if statements in there, and you have to be allow it so that the GPA, the largest GPA, could be any one of the 3, and the smallest could be any one of the 3. And also test scenarios where maybe there's 2 of the same or all 3 of the same, just to make sure that your logic works. All right, I hope this video helped, and I wish you lots of luck on this assignment. Thank you for your time.